Oh, excuse me. GTV, we'd like to get started, please.
What is this edition?
Good evening, welcome to the Goffstown Public Planning Board's public hearing on the proposed zoning amendments for 2025. I'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, board members, I would ask for anybody's input on how we want to do these. I suppose we should just do them individually like we normally do. Do we want to waive the full reading of them, or is that required under the statute? Do you have a full reading of the amendment?
The full reading would be like the red line version, and there are copies here for the public.
All right, so we'll just do a basic overview of the article. You can read the article as it's going to be presented, Joanne, on the ballot, the wording that will be on the ballot, and then you can give a brief description as to why we are addressing things the way we are.
Mr. Chair, do you want to do a roll call or?
Yeah,
No.
we can do that. Thanks. Dave? Start with you, Dave.
Dave Pearson, an alternate member.
Barbara Griffin.
Brian Mazer?
Colleen Mayu.
Tim Redmond.
Scott Ozana, Town Engineer.
Philip DeBenza. Hollis Adams, Select Board Representative.
Joanne Duffy, Planning and Economic Development Director.
Thank you. So we'll move back over to Joanne, please. Joanne?
Okay, so Article 2, it always starts with Article 2 because Article 1 is election of officers. Article 2, are you in favor? Oh, before we get into this, I just had a question. So this is the first hearing that you'll be having. I don't know how you, I can't remember how you normally do it, but do you carry these over to the second hearing and then vote at the end of that evening? Is that
Yeah, we have to have a second public hearing before we can vote.
Right, but is that how you'll do it? You'll
Yeah,
vote at the
yeah,
end of that? Okay, so there will be a second public hearing in January.
And I think what we'll do is, when we discuss each article that's brought up tonight, we'll take public comment on that article at the time, but that will be the only public comment on that article tonight when that article is presented. We're not going to circle back and go back to Article 2 at the end. So if anybody has anything to speak about on any of the articles, as soon as we finish the discussion among the board members and staff, the public hearing will be open and I will invite people to come up and speak. The rules for speaking are you have to come to the table, sit down, give your name and your address, and that way you'll be on the record, or your comments will be on the record. Thank you, everyone. Joanne?
Okay, so Article 2. Are you in favor of the adoption of Amendment Number 2 as proposed by the Planning Board to amend the definition of a butter in the glossary? So this amendment is a result of statutory changes per House Bill 139, which was voted up in the House this particular year, 2024. And the way it used to be worded was, and a butter was anyone could, let me just start from the beginning here. Anyone could file an appeal that was aggrieved by the decision of the planning board. And they've changed that to the abutter, the applicant and abutter as defined in RSA 672:3. So there's more of a definition as to who an abutter is and who can actually file an appeal with the Zoning Board of Adjustment. So that change follows through on wherever you see in the law referring to an abutter, they refer you back to that new RSA definition, which is a little more stringent than the old one. And then it also says further down in that law, it says abutter means any person whose property is located in New Hampshire and adjoins or is directly across the street or stream from the land under consideration by the local land use board. Directly across the street or stream shall be determined by lines drawn perpendicular from all pairs of corner boundaries along the street or stream of the applicant to pairs of projected points on any property boundary across the street or stream that intersects these perpendicular lines. Any property that lies along the street or stream between each pair of projected points or is within 50 feet of any projected point shall be considered an abutter. So that takes, people have complained about the wording of that. It's very, but once we, if this were to pass Article 2, once we get into this with actual applications, we'll start to get the swing of it and the understanding of why they did that, what they did. So that's Article number 2.
So question, Joanne? So the change that's proposed to Article 2 is to bring it in compliance with the law that was passed in Concord that we
Correct.
have to follow.
Yes, we did.
And the intent is that it provides a clearer direction to who we need to send notices when we get a plan.
Exactly.
And who can appeal a decision of the planning board.
Yes, so
Okay.
I'll give you an example. We had the conversation at the last meeting about what is a stream. And I did clarify with the state that it definitely is just a stream, not a river, not a lake, not a pond. It's
Okay.
just a stream.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So, if anybody in the public want to comment on Article number 2? Okay, we'll move on to Article 3.
Article 3 is another one where the state has enacted legislation concerning child care facilities. They've changed the name of them to say family daycare home or family child care home. And the old name was family daycare home. And they've also changed how many children are allowed, and they've done that for both family daycare home and family group daycare home. So there's 2 separate new definitions with different amounts of children that are allowed in each of those particular types of operation. They've also put in a change where if you have a daycare home, a daycare in your home, they've decided that those particular types of daycare do not need a site plan application. So,
Is that in Article 2?
no,
Is that-
that's in another article.
So let's not talk about
I'm just-
something that's not in Article 3.
Okay. So, I don't know if anyone has any questions about that.
Questions from board members?
No.
Okay, general public, this is your chance to comment on Article 3 tonight. As I said, there'll be another public hearing next month if something comes up that you need to study. Anybody on Article 3? Okay, Joanne, Article 4.
So Article 4 is basically the same thing. The only difference is that this covers family group daycare home. They've added a new definition in the glossary. The child care program, which is operated in a home, but this particular one allows more children than the family daycare home. And the children can be older, up to 7 to 12 years old. And it's basically the same change that they made in the first one.
Board members?
Yeah, so Joanne, the reference on that, like in the red line version, where we say group child daycare is defined in New Hampshire RSA 674, we need a better reference than that, because 674, I mean, that's that whole section, so we need to find the actual, just correct that to have the right RSA reference.
Do you have the number to give her, or?
No, I don't. I mean,
All right, I'm just wondering if you had it, that's
no,
okay.
I can help you with that if you need
So
it.
the 674 was something that was already in there? No. Where do you see 674?
On page 51, the red line, group child daycare is
Oh,
defined.
51, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong page. Okay. I'll check into
Yeah,
that.
that 5.6.4.
Joanne, does the wording on Article 4, does it also have to, should it reference the RSA?
Well, it depends. Sometimes we do reference the RSA in our ordinance, and sometimes we don't. If it seems like for the past several years, the state has been providing us with so much information now. They keep us up to date on the changes, and they do provide the House bill or the Senate bill so that we're aware of these changes. But sometimes if you reference an RSA and then that RSA is no longer there, then you're sort of out of sync. So it's really up to the board what they'd like to do.
I think Dave was saying in the article description that'll show up in the voting packet, because Article 3, you say per NHRSA 672, and it doesn't say that on 4.
Yeah,
think
I
that's why
have
he's
all of
asking.
the RSAs here, so I can definitely make that change.
Yeah, I think that's what you meant, right,
In-
Dave?
And-
On this description?
Yes.
Yeah.
So in the explanation portion, you're saying, not in the actual
I
article
think,
itself?
yeah, so
Yes.
when they
Right.
go, when the voter sees it, they'll understand.
The amount of children being cared for, we don't have any choice. It's state law to put those numbers in.
Oh, it was him, okay. And to follow up on that, why wouldn't we also add for Article 3 and Article 4, this new definition will replace in accordance with
The
new
RSA.
statutory requirements?
And then put the RSA's.
Yeah, in the site, yeah.
Board members good right now?
Yeah.
Okay, public hearing, Article 4. Does anybody want to speak about Article 4? Okay, Joe, want to move on to Article 5?
Okay. Article 5, are you in favor of the adoption of the amendment number 5 as proposed by the planning board as follows? Section 5-5.6, it shouldn't say 2, it should just say section. Child daycare facilities, add section 564, child daycare or group child daycare as defined in New Hampshire RSA 674. Family and group, this is like a tongue twister. Family and group family child care programs shall be allowed as accessory use to any primary residential use. Family or group family child care shall not be subject to site plan review in any zone where primary residential use is permitted per House Bill 1567.
Okay, comment, Joanne, we need to make this consistent, this change is in accordance with statutory requirements per HB 1567. You need to,
Yeah, I can do that on all of them.
yeah, it shouldn't be mixed in with the explanation.
Okay.
Same thing on the next one.
Yeah, I'll keep,
Okay, all
I'll
right,
do it.
just Article 5, we're on.
Well, there's actually multiple articles which refer House bills, so we
Right,
need to have
so
the
that's-
identical language on all the ends of all of them so that it's consistent and it doesn't confuse the issue. Okay, any board members on Article 5? Folks in the audience, anybody want to speak on Article 5? Okay. Article 6.
Article 6, are you in favor of the adoption of amendment number 6 as proposed by the planning board as follows? Amend section 7.2.5, table of off-street parking requirements, by adding a two-family with a studio and one bedroom under 1,000 square feet that meets workforce housing requirements will require 1.5 parking spaces per unit. A multifamily with 10 or more units will require 1.5 parking spaces per unit. Guest parking, now I added this in here, this wasn't part of it. Guest parking shall be provided in the amount of 1/4 of the total number of units per and then that's gonna get changed. Now, you probably want to have discussion on the last portion of it, if you feel that's,
Well, we were talking about parking spaces and then we switched to units. What are we talking? Are we talking parking spaces or are we talking housing units?
so the parking spaces are dependent on the number of housing units.
So what we talked about was that the state reduced the amount of parking that we can require, despite our experience that in housing, multifamily housing, we don't have enough parking. So the state has said we can't require as much parking. So we have to make this change to comply with the state law for particular sized developments. And so we talked about whether or not, to help alleviate what we are fairly sure is going to be the parking issue, having a guest parking requirement, because our experience is not only are we not having enough, the guest parking, and we've seen it in some recent developments with parking. So Joanne, I think what you're telling us is you added that because we discussed it.
Yes.
But that's not in HB 1400?
It's not in
No.
It's something we've added?
It's something
Yeah.
we've added.
Okay, I want to make sure that's clear.
Yeah. When you say 1/4 the total number of units, you mean like 0.25 spaces per unit? So like each 4 units is going to require 1 parking space? Or
Yeah, for every 4 units, you
Okay,
need
I
1
think
guest parking spot.
that just needs to be I think it's maybe just the switching of, how you're calculating it units versus, something about that just doesn't read properly to me.
One
so-
guest parking space
Okay.
shall be provided for every 4 housing units.
Yeah, or it,
Except that they don't build housing units in multiples of 4s. I think the
Yeah.
1/4,
yeah, 0.2,
the 1/4 properly addresses the number of
I
units
know,
that they're
but what are
building.
we
Yeah.
going to do, have them do a
So-
0.5?
I think just 0.25 parking spaces will be provided per unit. 0.25 guest parking spaces per unit, and then they just round to whatever's the, yeah, round up.
Round up.
Because you need to have at least.
Yeah.
So I think if you
Okay.
call it 0.25 is more consistent with how the rest of our parking calcs are done.
Okay.
Okay, so you're just substituting 1.25 for a quarter?
No, so you shall provide in the amount of 0.25 spaces per unit.
Oh, you just changed the,
Yeah,
Wording.
0.25 spaces per unit.
The important point is rounding up should be in the wording.
well, yeah,
I
that's
think that's
important.
already in there for our parking regs. I think if you calculate and you need like 27 and a half, then we require them to build 28,
It
right?
is in there, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, anything else from board members? Public Article 6. Okay. Article 7, Joanne.
Okay. Are you in favor of the adoption of amendment number 7 as proposed by the planning board as follows? Amend section 7.3.3, handicapped accessible spaces by changing the size of the handicapped accessible space from 18 1/2 feet in length and 8 feet in width to 20 feet in length and 9 feet in width. This was supposed to get changed last year when we changed the size of all parking spaces, and it was left out, so we're just being consistent with what the other spaces are, or what the other sizes are.
Board members?
Tim, I have a question. Procedurally, shouldn't we be opening the public hearing for each article and then closing it after each article?
The public hearing is open for the entire course of the
Okay.
meeting.
We're
I'm
just
just designating when the
Okay.
public folks can speak and when they have to listen to the reading of the
All right, so
article.
we'll take it individually.
All right, Article 7, public hearing. Does anybody want to speak on Article 7? Article 8.
Okay, Article 8, excuse me. Are you in favor of the adoption of amendment number 8 as proposed by the planning board as follows? Add section 7.5.3.2. An applicant may present an alternative parking arrangement to the planning board for residential use. The planning board shall be required to consider the alternative parking solution.
And that's per HB 1400, which is another mandate that came down from Concord.
Yes, and there's a lot more to it if you look at the red line version for that change.
It's kind of wishy-washy language. Shall
Yeah.
be, and then consider.
We're required to consider it, we're not
Yeah.
required to approve it.
But if you read further into it, the end part of it says, if a proposed residential use proposes to meet the on-site parking requirements prescribed by a local ordinance or regulation with an alternative parking solution due to economic considerations, the planning board shall be required to consider the alternative parking solution. The phrase alternative parking solution is defined by the statute to mean a proposal by an applicant to meet the parking demand created by a proposed residential use as a substitute for parking the on-site parking requirements. If the applicant can demonstrate that the alternative parking solution will meet the parking demand created by the proposed residential use, the planning board shall be required to approve the alternative parking solution proposed by the applicant. That's where they get you. And whoever is writing up these changes, horrible.
I'd like to know if the legislature defined due to economic considerations, because that either means that lumber costs too much or builders want to make more money. So I don't know what the answer to that one is. Economic considerations is such an open-ended statement that it has no boundaries. You could argue it in 3 different directions and never come up with a
This is all
consensus.
part of the statewide push for building and getting rid of local zoning ordinances, so.
Okay,
we're gonna see
Article
more of
8.
this.
Anybody from the public like to speak on Article 8? Saving it for the end, everyone. Article 9.
Article 9, are you in favor of the adoption of amendment number 9 as proposed by the planning board as follows? Section 8.5, illumination of parking areas. Add sentence to the end of this paragraph stating, all lighting fixtures shall have full cutoff shields, and merge 8.5 with 8.3 lighting projection. So we're eliminating one of those paragraphs, but just joining it into the existing, so we're not eliminating the language, just the extra paragraph.
Board members?
Just a suggestion that, to say that we're adding a sentence to 8.5 and then we're deleting 8.5, it just sounds,
Yeah, okay.
so maybe just
Say it
that we're
opposite.
deleting
Nope. Article 10.
Article 10, are you...
Joanne, on that, I'm sorry, on that last one, I thought just rereading this, I thought last time we talked about including the front lot line as well.
We had talked about making that all lot lines instead of rear and
Yeah,
side.
it still just says rear and side.
Oh, okay. I'll include that for the next one. Okay.
Scott? Okay, Article 10, Joanne?
Article 10, are you in favor of the adoption of amendment number 10 as proposed by the planning board as follows? Section 9, manufactured homes and manufactured home parks, allowing reasonable and realistic opportunities for the siting of manufactured housing on individual lots in manufactured housing parks and in subdivisions created for the placement of manufactured housing on individually owned lots. And again, this is state law, HB 1361.
Board members?
Question, Joanne, in the red line version, why don't we have just red lines through the 3 sections that we're trying to delete? So that,
You have to delete this section.
Because some of these things would still apply. I did,
well, but we're deleting, if we're deleting the section, it's,
well, I could put red lines through there if you like it, but the remaining sections there would stay. You wouldn't eliminate the whole thing.
well, I know, because, you know, what is this section? Is it a paragraph? Is it?
So in, say for instance, the first one, 9111, that entire section would be eliminated because
Right.
it would no longer apply.
Right, so that's getting redlined,
Yes,
and 9113 is getting redlined.
yeah.
But 9112 is staying? Is that what you're saying?
Right, and they'll all end up getting renumbered.
That's
Just
what-
to be
that's
super
what-
clear.
So if you show it as a red line, and then you can show the renumbering of the sections that are staying, it'll
Right.
make it easier.
Okay.
Then it's clear, yeah.
All right. I think that was it for that section.
That's Article 10?
So that was 10, right? Article 11.
Wait a minute, I didn't ask for a public hearing on Article
Oh,
10.
sorry.
Anybody want to speak on Article 10 at this time?
So Article 10 basically loosens up the regulations for manufactured housing. Before, they always had to be in a manufactured housing park, like we have here in Medville. And now they can go on an individual lot, and they can also go into a subdivision for those types of housing.
Okay, Article 11? Oh, want to speak on Article 10? Come on up. Article 10?
Yeah.
Come on up.
My name's Stephen Babin. I live at 66 Peppermint Street, obviously in Goffstown. The concern I have with manufactured parks is on multiple levels. In our neighborhood, behind it, a few years ago, they were talking about putting about a 45 unit or a very large number of mobile homes. And the developer said, oh, we're going to put city water. The city water is a well field, and that's city water. And some of our neighbors already have problems supporting their homes with water demands. The other problem I have with it too is the schools are going to be really taxed on funding with some of the things I've been hearing from Concord. And the class sizes are getting larger, and the tax base from manufactured homes just doesn't help pay for that. So I'm not trying to be a jerk about affordable housing, but we have to look at the big picture in funding and water, not to mention traffic. Those are concerns of mine for that.
Those type of concerns would be addressed at a public hearing when an application comes forward. But this does come down from Concord under HB 1361. So the state of New Hampshire has stated that we have to look in this direction and work in this direction, but we still have to review all applications when they come in.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Joanne, let's move on to Article 11.
Okay, Article 11, are you in favor of the adoption of amendment number 11 as proposed by the planning board as follows? Amend section 15.3.7.10, appeal and application procedure. Appeals to the Board of Adjustment concerning any matter within the board's powers as set forth in New Hampshire RSA 674:33 may be taken by removing, and again, before it said any person aggrieved. So we're removing that and adding the applicant as a butter as defined in RSA 672:3 by any officer, department, or bureau of the municipality affected by any decision of the administrative officer. So they've really opened that one up to allow many other people to appeal. The,
This is a ZBA rule,
yes,
a ZBA
change.
change, it's not a planning board.
No.
Board members? General public, Article 11. Come on up.
Hi, my name's Keegan Chassie, 77 Sage Court. I'm just wondering, can you clarify what exactly that would mean? That would mean somebody across town or somebody down the street couldn't appeal anything because they're not directly abutting that
This
property?
is the exact opposite of that. This opens
what
it
I'm
up so
wondering, yeah.
more people have the right to.
Okay,
to
that's just
appeal.
what I want to clarify.
It's not
Okay.
restricting it, it's enlarging it.
Okay,
It's more people, but it's like more governmental departments, because the change is the applicant, obviously, and the abutter, that's the same as before. And then they add by any officer, department, or bureau of the municipality affected by any decision of the administrative officer.
I think it actually has I think it limits it somewhat, because I think
Yeah.
aggrieved used to have and unfortunately this is a change that we don't have any control over, but aggrieved used to be that you had to prove standing in court, where to prove standing, typically you're going to need to be somebody who is directly impacted, being that you are an abutter and you have some direct impact to you. So this eliminating that, I think.
But they increased the abutters' rights early
Yeah.
in another article, so,
Yeah, the abutters definition is
is
broadened a little bit.
broadened.
Yeah,
So
but it's not.
see, I was kind of confusing though.
Welcome to
Like-
Concord.
It is.
Yeah.
And we have to
Oh,
interpret
this
this
is
stuff.
Goffstown.
Right,
Yeah.
so that's why you can understand, like, anybody in your position might be able to understand some of this stuff, but when I go online or I read this stuff, half of it is so confusing. I just feel like there should be, maybe, one wording for, people in office, or maybe a law or something like that, but there should be like a layman's term, like, this is really what
Plain
this means to
language.
you or the city or something like that, because I've been reading this stuff and I'm like, I don't even know what this pertains to or like how this is worded. It's so confusing. And then some of this stuff, like, is this paperwork available online, or do I have to come here and physically get this piece of paper?
It's online.
This one that was right here, it is all
We
online?
have an
Yeah.
open seat here on the board. We'd like to invite you to come and join us.
I just
And you
couldn't
could
find
get
some of this
educated
stuff.
every Thursday
Yeah,
night for the next
yeah.
3 years.
Yeah, no,
It's under planning department.
okay.
And then under zoning, you'll see it.
Okay, and there's somewhere I can sign up for, I don't know, emails or something? I don't have to check this daily? Like, what does that pertain
You
to?
can sign up for emails for like meetings and minutes of meetings
Okay.
and things like that, but not when they just make a change to the actual department's page.
Okay,
They don't send you that. But, you can always call the office and we can just email it to you.
okay.
There probably would have been a notification about tonight, right? In that email
Yeah.
alert, probably,
There-
I'm guessing?
There's a public notice, it went into the newspaper and it's also on our website.
Yeah, so that's why I'm just trying to figure out where's the easiest way to find this, because we didn't find out till like last night that this meeting was even happening, so.
That's because no one goes on to the website.
That's what I mean though, I did go on the website and I was like, I could sign up for like 15 of these different things, but then I get 100 emails,
Yeah.
I gotta search through all three, like nobody wants to, that's tough to
I still don't
to try to
understand why I
keep up
can't
with
go
it.
on and type in calendar and
That's
get
what
the
I'm
calendar.
yeah,
I'm like,
exactly. Right. I feel like there's the right to know, right? So I feel like it should just be made so much easier for somebody to just physically go on and go, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I'm interested in, and it should pop up. Or a
Submit your
calendar.
comments
like you
on
said.
the site, please. One of my first comments was
Yeah.
why we had a picture of town heading out of town.
Yeah.
But it still hasn't been changed, so
Okay,
submit
gotcha.
your comments.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, what do we,
Wait a minute, anybody else for
Eleven.
Article 11?
okay.
Seeing none, we'll go to 12.
Article 11. Oh, we just finished
Wait for
Article
it,
11.
yeah.
Article 12. Are you in favor of the adoption of amendment number 12 as proposed by the planning board as follows? Section 15.3.7.7, rehearing. Amend this section to identify which parties can request a rehearing before the zoning board. And that is 15.3.7. That's.
I think it's self-explanatory, and
It's the same as the other. It's the applicant and a butter as defined by RSA 672:3, or by any officer, department, board, or bureau of the municipality affected by any decision of the
I
administrative
think,
officer.
Joanne, you mixed 11 and 12 on your explanation. I think 11 is 13.5. Oh, you did 10 before 7, that's why, sorry, I was confused.
Yeah, I jumped ahead there.
Okay.
But they're just changing the definitions of things.
And that's again driven by that House
Yeah.
bill change, so that, are those two when you do the cleanup on like, just referencing. So that way it's clear that like 11 and 12 are both because of the changes in statute
Yeah.
from Concord, so we can't.
All right, anything else from board members? General public, Article 12? Okay,
And
well, we only have one left.
the last one is Article 13. Are you in favor of the adoption of amendment number 13 as proposed by the planning board as follows? Section 13.5, open space developments, remove entire section. And
Board
that's-
members?
So I'll start it off and say that and I'm guessing that's why a number of people are here this evening, so the first thing I think we need to make clear is that we can't discuss any current applications or applications that are pending or possibly coming before the planning board, so this is just a zoning hearing on this. When we reviewed this as a zoning subcommittee, we've been looking at the open space development, and the ordinance, in my mind, is flawed, and I think it's written poorly. It allows for, there's no needing to defend the fiscal or financial feasibility of a plan and developing the yield plan, so I think that there can be the ability to overestimate the number of lots that should be permitted in an open space plan, and I don't know that it's really accomplishing the effect of preserving open space. That's the intent would be to preserve good quality open space. We have other restrictions that require wetland buffers and are preserving setbacks from some of those protected resources, but I just feel like the ordinance as it's written, there are flaws in it. And so when we talked about this at the subcommittee, and I'm giving this explanation because I know there are a number of people here who weren't a part of our workshop, that the discussion at the subcommittee was, do we try to fix something that's really kind of messed up and is not accomplishing what we want it to in terms of protecting open space? Or do we eliminate that section from the ordinance so that we don't have more applications coming in that we're not sure are really accomplishing what we want to see happening in town, and work on coming up with a better ordinance that we propose and come in with in the future? So that is as one person member of the board, where we were trying to fix something that, in my opinion, is not well written at this point.
I would agree with you, it is not well written, but just because the car isn't running good doesn't mean you hook it up to a tow truck and bring it down and crush it.
Yeah.
Okay, you bring it to a mechanic to make changes so that it will run properly. I think it needs to be looked at and tweaked so that it does what we really want it to do. That'll take some work, but so be it. That's my opinion.
I
Barbara?
know that there are a lot of people who think it needs to be worked on. I don't have any problem with an ordinance, but starting with this ordinance is not even a good idea. I can say that when you start to amend documents or bills and you work from the base product that you're dissatisfied with and you start rewriting it, you never address the issue. So what's the issue in open space? Back in the 80s, this town had way more undeveloped property. My guess is most of the people in this room are living in lots that were made after the 80s. And there was a fear in southern New Hampshire and throughout the state of massive building coming forward. So cluster development or open space development was looked at as a way to preserve open space. At that time, Goffstown had a number of properties that were old working farms or farms that had gone, the fields had been gone, but they were still large parcels of property. And it was felt that by having this open space development, it would allow property owners to still develop it and then have the benefit of the open space. I think we might have been one of the first communities to do it. Since then, a number of communities have done it. I will tell you our ordinance, when I look at other communities, even New Boston, where I swear to God they used a typewriter to do their zoning ordinance because of the font. Londonderry, they're all substantially larger, address far more issues, and get to the core of what open space is supposed to be so we can evaluate it. We're having open space applications come in with land that as a practical matter would not be developed in a conventional subdivision, and builders, property owners are getting an advantage that the town is no longer receiving, because the extra road from a maintenance standpoint, from a percentage standpoint, it's no longer significant. It was 30 years ago. The other big issue that we have seen here, and the offices in town here see, is that we have these tracts of conservation land that no one owns. Homeowners associations have essentially fallen by the wayside for the most part, and we actually have no provision in our zoning ordinance for who is supposed to own and manage the open space. We are requiring it as some of the applications, but we have no process to follow for it. So we have instances where we have seen in the town or this planning board where things are being done on property by people who don't own it, or on property that is owned by somebody else, and there is no one to take action on because it's just sort of out there. There are a lot of groups, which I have been associated with, like the Piscataquag Land Conservation Group, who manage properties, but they don't have enough volunteers to do it, and frankly, don't want to take property. The Forest Society doesn't even want to look at managing a parcel if it's not a certain acreage, and we've had some property where owners have been looking for somebody to manage it and they can't do it. So and the other reality is that the number of parcels in town, if you were to identify them today as to who would be able to take advantage of it, and from this I'm assuming we're talking 20 acres or more, because there's a 10-acre and a 20-acre provision, there aren't that many left. So I think from watching different developments in town, I think we have seen some developments that are not consistent with what some of the other abutting neighborhoods are, and it has become, there is also enforcement issues and management issues with it. And, you know, if people want to volunteer and do a new ordinance, I think that's great, but from a planning board standpoint, we're just seeing the applications and they haven't been great. So with that, I will skip it.
Okay, any other board members? Okay, so I can imagine everyone here would probably like to have something to say. That's why you're here, or maybe just to listen. I would ask that everyone try to be as brief as they could. I'm not saying you don't have as much time to speak as you like, but if other folks have said something, please say you agree with them rather than repeat everything that was stated by a prior speaker. And brevity will help us all.
And Tim, just for clarification, the planning board voted to put things on this warrant. The purpose of the public hearing, just so everybody is aware, not everything that goes on this ends up on your warrant in March, nor does it necessarily end up in the same form. So just because it's here doesn't mean this is a done deal.
It's here for discussion purposes, because we want to hear what the community has to say. So.
Okay, sir, you're up first.
Hi. Thank you. My name is Joe Starr. I live at 37 Peppermint Street, Goffstown.
Everybody has to speak clearly because we don't have a minute taker for names especially, so if you could just say your name clearly, maybe even spell your last name would be real helpful for the minute taker, because they will do it from the DVD.
Cool. My name is Joe Starry, Joestarry. Sorry about the southern accent, it might be a little throwing you off there. I live at 37 Peppermint Street in Goffstown, and like it's been mentioned before by Mr. Babin, the water isn't that great over there. I have to get a pressure washer just to blow off a filter for the hot tub and stuff. So I'm worried that if you did open this up and make these, that we have a green space over there. So if we did do away with this amendment that y'all are talking about, you could deplete the resources that we have. I mean, I'm already struggling with it right now. Plus, I think there's going to be a lot of traffic around here. I mean, there already is, right? But have you seen those accidents on Terrell Hill? That road's a pretty dangerous road, and I've already seen 2 of them in the last couple of years. So I think my concern, though, with this one, on this amendment, because I know it's about scrapping it or not, A couple of things that's on here that I really enjoy is the conservation stuff's on here. So if somebody comes in to develop something and it doesn't pass this conservation related to water, we could have an issue. So it's like, why would y'all want to basically vote yourself out of a job or having the say-so on if this can be approved or not for our own community? I know y'all said this comes from Concord on some things, but I don't know if Concord knows about Peppermint Street. You know,
Not this one. This one does not come.
I'm
from
just using what we had said previously. And I know somebody mentioned, well, this is wrote poorly and let's just get rid of it. Well, some people don't like Christmas. Do we get rid of December? Buses are packed. I see kids standing on them already. So my thing is, don't get rid of this. Don't scrap it. Amend it, look it over, but don't scrap it. And maybe prolong this, push it out 6 months to review it better, find out why we had it in the first place and what we can do to make it better, but don't scrap it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Steve Norander, Norander. I live at 92 Juniper Drive. I too also have water issues. We have to have a booster pump or we have no water pressure. My concern with this is, why would we get rid of this if we don't have anything to go in its place? I would think it might be a little more prudent to generate a new document or guidance, however you want to word it, to be ready to go when you decide to get rid of this, instead of just getting rid of this. I work in city government. I can see this going away, and then who knows how long till some other amendment comes along to replace it. It's just the way it works. So that's all I want to say. I just think it'd be prudent to have a new document in place before you get rid of this one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Diane Damaris, Desmarais, 80 Ginger Drive. Similar question, but what would be the plan if we said we just got rid of this, and what would be in its place in the interim?
There would be no cluster zoning applications permitted if it was voted out.
So, just to clarify, there's no change in the density for, so whether we have the open space or not, in fact, it could be argued that the open space allows for more density because of the calculations and the way the property can be done. So if somebody came in to develop a property, they'd have to meet the zoning ordinance. So if you're in agricultural, because I think you're all probably in agricultural, there's a minimum lot size for each house
I was going to say,
frontage. And so that would be what would apply. Whereas in an open space, they can get smaller lot sizes. And
so historically, when I moved to Goffstown, there was a two-acre minimum ordinance. That's what
Still
you
is in
had.
agricultural.
Right. But in our development, we don't have that, and, you know, well, in the upper part of the development, that does not exist.
Right.
They were given, I don't know, I'm going to assume 1.5 acre lots, and then there's a open space that they all share that meets that ordinance.
That meets the ordinance that we're talking about getting rid of.
Right.
Right. So if you don't have those open spaces, that requires everybody to have the 2.5 acres.
Yes.
So from here forward, if that was to go away, any new development proposals coming in would require you, all builders, to provide each home with a 2-acre lot at minimum.
In the zone, like the agricultural zone is 2 acres, the conservation zone is 5 acres. The R1 zone, the R2 zones.
So if
all
part of
have-
your property landed into conservation land,
Conservation zone is a
Zone.
different,
Yeah, I
is a
guess I
different
don't
word than
understand that.
conservation land.
Open space conservation space is not the conservancy zone. So you can't really see on the side here, but the conservation zone is larger lots, and it's primarily the Uncanunic Mountain area. The area of Peppermint that area of town is primarily agricultural, so those are 2-acre zoned lots.
okay.
But Pinardville and the village would be 1 acre or less, depending on if you have water or sewer. That's sort of how the zoning
Okay.
laws go.
Okay. So I guess my big concern is whenever we talk about any type of, you know, ordinances where we're changing these type of things, is that we're thinking of the density, we're thinking of what it brings to the town and not only higher population. I think the town looks at these type of things as more tax income coming in, but you all are smart enough to know that it also costs us a lot of money to support families and homes and things coming in. And I know in the past, we have other developments that have tried to go in up in our areas that, you know, were voted down because enough investigation was put into it by residents in order to make that recognized by the town. So I caution you highly to really look at these things. What is the impact on our school? What is the impact on our traffic system? The cost of, you know, sewer and water to get into these places.
Those are strictly residential wells and septic systems.
Exactly,
Sewer, water,
but you're already hearing the residents saying what a problem they have with water.
Well, this is kind of, you're almost making our argument for us, because when you have a conventional subdivision, if it's a 30-acre parcel, they have to do what they call a yield plan. And what that shows is what a conventional subdivision would look like on that parcel of land. Taking out real estate for roads, right-of-ways, and then building lots, all meeting frontage, sidelines, all the regulations of the zone. So a yield plan might say that that property could propose a 30-lot subdivision that meets all the regulations. When they come back with a cluster subdivision, or this thing that we're talking about, they get to set aside a large parcel of land for open space and then put all those houses on reduced lots in a smaller confine on that large parcel. Now, when you're talking about wells, which they are all going to be, if your wells are on lots that are like piano keys going down the side of the road, your water supply is going to be diminished quicker than if it would if the lots were spread out over the whole parcel, because now the entire parcel is supporting the wells instead of a small portion of it that is allowed for the cluster zone, and then the other portion is set aside for the open space.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just trying to make sure that it's clear that an open space subdivision could actually end up with more houses and a greater impact on the area than a conventional subdivision would with less.
I guess my memory of a division that was going to go up there, water was going to need to be brought in. It was an over 50 community and 80-20.
That was a long time
That
ago.
was
I
a
remember
long
that.
time ago. And water needed to be pumped up either from the Grassmere Water Precinct, which is a private water precinct, or it needed to come up from Manchester from the Goffstown back road, which was a major undertaking. And financially, obviously, for the amount of houses they wanted to put in there. So there's just, you know, I just get concerned when we start looking at these and, you know, dollar signs, you know, for tax income coming into the town. I would love to see more business, you know, development, small business development and things like that to divert our taxes, you know, from going up versus, you know, building more and more housing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My name is, I don't want to scare the room, but everybody knows me as Chip George, but my name is Leonard Luther George Jr. And I live on 24 Acorn Drive, Goffstown. I've been there for 20 years. First thing I'd like to say is shame on me. Obviously, everybody, and I'm going to speak for half this room, is selfish because until it impacts us, we all wake up. I want to say that right off the bat. And just call a spade, half the people in this room, and you're making it a lot clearer, are trying to figure out what open space development means. You just stated from the last meeting that I was here about the piano and how that water, and the guy showed a page on, and I'm talking about the end of Acorn Drive, where they were going to disperse all that. So, and then you talked about a yield plan, which I mean, half this room has no idea. You talked about them taking that 250 acres, making it 100 something or 150 acres, and they were going to do the lots. and then they were gonna have the open space land, correct?
They made a conceptual presentation
Yeah.
to us, but we made no decisions on anything because they had to come back with
Okay,
more.
just to clarify, did you pass the yield plan?
Did we agree to the yield plan? Yes,
Be-
because,
Okay, I
We
wanna
had a
know,
conceptual
wait a
discussion,
minute,
but we don't
we're gonna
agree
start,
to
we're gonna
anything.
stop right now,
Yeah,
sir.
'cause we can't talk
We don't
about
we don't generally do back and forth during public comment.
okay, that's fine, then.
We'd
let me-
like you to, we'd like to hear what you say.
Okay, right in your own Goffstown plan that you guys, I don't know if you have a consultant write it or whatever it is you have to do, but it's called the Goffstown Master Plan. It's on the website. There is a section called land use. This is me doing homework in 15 minutes, so shame on me. But the section says, right on it, Dave, can you come read this? I can't get it.
You need my glasses?
Yeah, it says, okay, thank you. And I'm not being aggressive, it just says, in your own game plan, Goffstown development patterns have remained relatively consistent since 2006 master plan. Now, you updated this until in 2020, correct? Okay. In the 2006 master plan, unintended consequences from the historically dominant residential development, were identified. Okay, now these patterns, which this directly affects, what I'm thinking, Article 13, make it clear to me. If it doesn't, that basically unintended consequences from the historically dominant residential developments have arisen. Many of the consequences from this pattern of development are relevant in 2020. They include, and this is the first one, right in your master plan, large areas of open space, often working agricultural and forest lands outside the established village areas, and I apologize for my reading, have been consumed. And that's what we're talking about here, right? A lot of people have been getting in developments that we didn't really understand what was going on. Am I articulating this correctly?
Well, the area that most of you live in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thus threatening the very rural character of the townspeople say they cherish so highly. So if we rewrite this, or you guys decide, granted, you're elected officials, we're trusting you, we're entrusting you to make correct decisions and protect us. But I don't know what the actual impact, if you move this, would do to your master plan, number one. And number two, what happens when you're trying to update this? What do we have to go back on? The developer could come in here next month and just, this would be pushed aside. We haven't even, but it's an open space development, correct? So how does that work is what I'm asking. I mean, and honestly, we're all confused. I speak for, I know at least 20 people in the room. And I get this, and all of a sudden this pops up, open space development. I'm not really sure, but you two young ladies have articulated it pretty well, kind of in a different, one was you wanted to rewrite it, and you said it's probably not the time. But my question to you would be, if we do rewrite it, what good does it do for Goffstown? And if we do rewrite it, can somebody weasel in, as we always read on CNN or hear on CNN, that, something bypassed something and all of a sudden a power plant's going up? I just would like to know in clarity, my concerns are, you passed the yield plan and there were 3 or 4 things, and shame on me again, on the 25-page town report that we should have been educated on. I should have come in then and known. But number one, is it even affordable? And I don't think they even showed that. I mean, they're gonna put in a major road and 40 houses. They didn't show the wastewater management plan. Where's all that water going? Where's all the environment? How's it gonna be impacted? They didn't show the guy was good, he was an expert. He never answered what type of housing's going there. Is it gonna be better than or equal to our housing? And even if it's better in, the taxes go up, we'll end up paying more taxes.
So excuse me for asking, are you for this or against this?
'Cause you
I
just-
don't know, that's what I'm trying to say.
I'd like to get a baseline here because
I'm trying to have.
all
you
your
explain.
arguments seem to support getting rid of a cluster
Exactly.
subdivision.
Yes.
So you're in favor of it?
I'm in favor of having it clear so somebody can't go in and do what's happening right now. I don't know how this impacts exactly. I just know it has something to do with what's gonna go on, you know, in the future. I'm entrusting you guys to tell us what's going on. I mean, I know there's, like I said, 20
Right.
people in here that, and I don't wanna
Can I
take
just
up your
say
time, and I don't wanna,
hypothetical, do a hypothetical?
it's just, we're all confused. Maybe
Right.
half of us wouldn't show up if we knew.
I would like everyone to state their position when they come up to the table. You're either against this or for it. I'd like to know where you stand when you make your comments so that I'm not up here confused by the comments as well.
And I think it's also valid to say that you're confused and you don't understand, and so if that's.
I mean, I can read,
Yeah.
not in this font, but
Yeah,
literally, I mean, seriously, we're just all a little confused, and, you know, we've been here 20 years, and in your own master plan, it says we're trying to keep, you know, our families from going through 3 years. We don't have timelines, we don't really know what's gonna happen. Now, I get somebody has a piece of land and wants to make some money. I get that. That's what they're gonna do. But they haven't even, literally, the yield plan, excuse me, that's just my opinion, I didn't see a cost feasible. Nobody said the type of houses and
We're not allowed to judge an application on cost.
I get that, but I mean,
We'd be sued if we did that.
yeah, okay.
So
I didn't know
I think
that,
we
so,
can
okay.
actually.
we have to look at a plan that if it either meets our regulations or does not meet our regulations.
Okay,
If it meets the regulations, then we consider, yes, it is something that could be done. Barbara?
okay.
Okay, so hypothetically speaking, I own an 80-acre parcel. It's in the agricultural zone. If the land was perfectly flat and had a great aquifer under it, I could theoretically lay out a road and get on 80 acres up to 40 houses in the agricultural zone. Now, I'd have to subtract the land for the road, and there'd be easements. So let's say out of 80 acres, I could get 60 acres, which would be 30 houses. So under our current zoning regs, a plan before our board, without any variances or waivers or other technical stuff that is not germane, I would come in with a subdivision plan for my 80 acres showing, what did I say?
30 houses.
30 houses. With a road network, right? At my end.
And it consumes the entire parcel.
And it's on the entire parcel. And the road network, I will just say, you know, hypothetically, the board might say you have to connect to another development, so it's a through road, or you have to have a loop, or
Yeah, these are all the things
all
that-
the things that would be discussed. And on every lot, they would need to show that there is a building area and a well area.
And a septic
and a
area.
septic area. And so that would be 30 houses on the 80 acres, and they would need to go through the expense of putting in the road, or in some cases, if they want public water, which allows them to have houses on smaller lots, they need to pay to hook into the village or Grassmere, which
Yeah,
is
of
Manchester, and bring it in.
mean-
And we've dealt with that before here in this board, where developers come in and they bring in a private water source, and eventually everybody ends up with it. So that would be a traditional development. If I decided I wanted to come in with my 80 acres and do an open space, I would need to essentially do my plan and say, hey, look, I can get 60 houses if I put in a road and meet all your requirements. But I am going to ask to put the houses on smaller lots and put in less road, and maybe I'll make a tiny little cul-de-sac with the houses right around the cul-de-sac, and the back 60 acres of my 80 acres I'm going to leave green space. Well, that means that all of the houses now on the cul-de-sac, we have to fit in the well and the septic on that smaller lot, and all the houses are clustered, you hear clustered, around a particular spot. The yield plan that you're talking about is because, and it's in our plan, is because if an applicant is coming in and doing an application to develop it, we're assuming that there are certain calculations that they've done to make sure that it can go forward. When an applicant comes in with a yield plan, it is a theoretical plan. And they'll have stamps, but it will not have gone through the review that a standard application for a plan will have done. Because they're just going to show on a plan that yes, they can do it. And in some, if my 80 acres is not flat, if my 80 acres is now on a hill, I am going to say, well, we have to deduct, we're not deducting road, we're deducting if it's a steep slope over 25 degrees, or it's a wetland, which would all be considered, we're going to deduct that, and we're going to come up with how many houses we could have. So, but in the yield plan, there's no, we're not require, our ordinance does not require third-party verification of the yield plan, that it's correct. It does not require to show that it is financially feasible to put it in. So you can come in with a yield plan with certain stamps. I'm not saying they're not engineered, but it's certainly not to the level of a plan. Is that fair?
Correct. I mean, the ones we've seen recently had a little more engineering behind them than I think they typically would do because of the terrain, just to prove that they could get road profiles and some driveways to work. But typically it is not even close to engineered to completeness.
But in the yield plan, and I'm not gonna, I want everybody else.
Yeah,
to-
and everybody
We're
wants
gonna
to
shorten
say.
this back.
Yeah,
I went on. So I just want to. So everything you said, frankly, supported getting rid of the ordinance the way it stands now. Just so you understand.
People that are concerned about waters, wells in their neighborhood and water running short and not having enough water should not want a cluster subdivision, because cluster subdivisions drain the resources in a smaller area of the total parcel than a conventional subdivision does using the entire parcel.
Okay, I'll cut to the chase. Last question. If we did, if you guys.
Not questions, statements from you.
Statements. If you guys did decide, then the one that you're gonna rewrite, would it protect us more or less?
We would put correct deficiencies in the wording to create something that is at least enforceable as a document. We could also look at other towns that have these types of ordinances and see what their problems have been. And a lot of times ordinances morph over the years as problems arise, and they will remove a piece of that ordinance or add to it to prevent the same mistake from happening twice.
Okay.
So that's the answer to that.
Can I just-
Bill?
Yeah, you mentioned about prior applicant that come in. If you followed some of them, and I don't know if you do.
No, shame on me. I
No,
mean,
no,
I will now, I'm telling you.
One
but-
of the issues, or a few of the issues are, sometimes when you look at something and you see open space, well, the name open space, it projects something different to everybody, but it gives like
Yeah,
it's
that's
open
what we saw,
space,
yeah.
and it's what people like. That's why I go and I own 2 acres in the agricultural zone, because I want some open space.
Yeah.
This used to, back then, when you mentioned the 2002 and the master plan back then, this was written to achieve that, to maintain that. And what's happened, as was mentioned earlier,
Yeah, they
as
trimmed it.
things evolve, it's no longer doing that. The fellow came in and he wanted to do an application, he could only get so many lots. We heard from the public wasn't, the abutters weren't happy with it. And what did he do? He came in with what? Open space. Now we got more lots. Now, this is what we're faced against.
Okay.
This open space allowed him to get more than we really wanted. We're not achieving what our goal was from back then. And what we're looking at is just to eliminate it, and then we'll work on seeing if it's even feasible to put back in. It's actually a little bit more restrictive. The building is more restrictive without it.
Okay, so before I leave, is get rid of it.
Thank you, Leonard. George, for your comment.
Yeah, sorry, but,
Next
thank you.
person who'd like to speak, come on up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, my name is Julie Grand George,
Hi,
and I am
Julie.
against getting rid of this.
Excuse me?
I'm against.
You're against getting rid, okay.
Number one, I was hearing from Barbara that there are examples of well-written open space in New Boston. Look at them and come up with a new one. And when you have a new one that looks better, then scrap this one. But if you scrap this one, I'm hearing from you guys, and I don't think you're going to put anything else in. And that concerns me very much. I was on the planning board ages ago when open space was just starting. And what happened was there was a development, and this is foggy memory, so don't hold me to it, on the Harry Brook watershed area. And there were driveways all over the place going toward wherever there was high land. There were culverts, areas where, looking at it, it seemed like if there was a heavy rain, and especially nowadays, those driveways would be gone. And I don't know if they developed open space and then they went to this, I can't remember. But what could have happened or did happen is there was an area that was high and dry where they could cluster these houses with not just on little tiny lots. I mean, somebody mentioned an acre and a half. That's a good sized lot. But I don't recall what they had, but they could place it in an area that was suitable, that eliminated multiple crossings of streams, that eliminated areas that were clear cut, because that's a very sensitive area. It eliminated a lot of the roadways that they would have to build, and it preserved a large amount of area. Now, I understand it's hard to get stewards, and that's, I think, a challenge for the town to come up with something like that. But I think clustering and leaving open space, number one, does provide open space for this community. And number two, it does reduce that hardscape area, that if you're talking about a great big, large subdivision in agricultural, you're talking about driveways for every single house, all over. I mean, every 2 acres, you're breaking up that big open space. You're going to have larger lawns. It does not make sense to me to eliminate a planning tool, especially in a town like Goffstown. You can look at Bedford, it's got hills and wetlands, but we have mountains and runoff and lots of wetlands, and it's a difficult town. And we need something. First of all, I mean, I was never pro-developer, but if they're going to come to town and look at our ordinance, you know, if they want to build some houses here, they need a way to do it without crossing the multiple areas, the streams, those kinds of things, that if you're requiring a clear-cut 2-acre, you know, you're plotting houses all over, breaking up substantial areas, creating larger lawns, breaking up those animal trails. And I'll tell you, I hate to bring up a bad time, but I can't tell you how many people during COVID told me how happy they were to have those trails behind their house, to get out. And so, personally, I think you're jumping the gun big time by getting rid of an ordinance when you have lots of good examples in front of you that you could take and put together a new ordinance. It's not easy being a volunteer. I stepped out of it a long time ago, but I did a lot of it, and with Joanne too, we spent a lot of time working. But you need an ordinance before you get rid of this ordinance.
Thank you, Julie. Whoever's next, just come on up. Whoever gets to the microphone first gets it.
Do I have to run?
You didn't have to, you made it walking.
David Pelletier, Pelletier, 1118 Acorn Drive in Goffstown. I do not understand the legalese that this is written with. but in the first glance, it seems to me as though if you get rid of this, it's eliminating the language that allows us, abutters, to oppose building. And the building approvals that people are looking to get in the areas beyond Acorn Drive. Am I wrong?
I don't think your rights are going to be
Okay.
crimped for speaking
It
out
just
against any.
seems as though
This
all
is-
these red areas are,
This is,
Are you
that are
talking about the
crossed out?
abutter language?
yes.
Okay.
That's a different article.
I think he's talking about the different articles.
oh, you missed it when we asked for comments
That's
on
a-
a butter language back when we were on the butter article,
Okay.
right?
I
What
also
what
think he's
article are you talking
The
about?
grievance
That-
one too.
all
I
right,
think he's
the-
talking
the-
about.
The packet is
The
a whole.
Article
language
13.
in, the language in the packet is
Oh.
specifically in regards to appeals of decisions.
No, he's talking about Article 13, he just said so. Barbara.
Yes. Article 13, the stuff that's in red and crossed out pertains to abutters being able to oppose building permits.
So those, that red language is associated with Articles 11 and 12. So the packet here that has about 10 or 12 pages that includes a bunch of different red line language, those are the red lines that include all 13 articles are basically in that package. So the Article 13 that would eliminate the open space development is not changing anything about the abutter definitions, rehearing.
Okay.
But those earlier articles are changing some of the definitions and how we describe an abutter and what the rehearing process is. But those are those changes we were saying before. The state legislature and their infinite wisdom passed requirements that said that towns must make these changes. So that's what some of those changes that refer to abutters and that language, that is from other articles that has come down from the legislature that we need to make those changes
Okay.
to meet their requirements.
Okay.
But the open space article itself is not triggering those abutter definitions, and that's.
Gotcha.
And you'll always be able to, like, air your grievances with that wording was about appeals. So if something was approved that you wanted to appeal, but it was across town, I think that's where it kind of limits you. But you're always welcome to come to these meetings and express your concerns whenever.
Gotcha.
Any resident of the town of Goffstown can come to a public hearing at a planning board meeting and speak about any application that's before us. It could be on a project that's on the exact opposite side of town from your home, and you have a right to speak about that application as a resident of this town.
Gotcha.
So you're not being infringed in any way, shape, or form. Matter of fact, those butter things are actually improving the lanes for people to travel in to state, well, the reconciliation is the bigger part.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sorry for the confusion.
No problem.
Okay, who's gonna run up next? Come on.
Good evening. Joseph Russo, 69 Cinnamon Drive. I agree with what a lot of the citizens here have come up to say tonight. I think what's hard to distinguish between residents that aren't really, abreast of this kind of situation or have experience with it is whether this is a good change or not a good change to just take out this ordinance. To us, you can make the fact that if we get rid of this, we're going to have 2-acre lots, it's agricultural, and there may be less homes. I believe with the open space development ordinances, there needs to be at least 50% open space designated to that amount of acreage that's being developed. So therefore, there'd be more open space, but there may be clustered homes. But you would still retain some amount of open space. But I think what happens with a lot of us, what we don't understand, is this more advantageous for us as residents, or is this more advantageous for a developer to come in with less, stipulations to basically come in and to develop something? Does it lessen the cost incurred to the developer to make a project more feasible? I think that's what a lot of us don't understand. Because if we just decide to eliminate an ordinance, that's going to make it more advantageous for a developer for something that none of us want, then you can say, okay, you're going to get less houses, or they're not going to be clustered. But it may make it easier for development to go through. And I think that's where a lot of us aren't sure if this ordinance, to get rid of it, is good or bad. I think with most things, whether it's, you know, in the private sector or anything else, when you have a policy, it's very not common to just eliminate a policy. We can all agree, or you guys can agree as a planning board and say, hey, there's a problem with this policy. We should look at the policy and we should amend the policy and, you know, maybe put a timeline to it, or, you know, something, you know, to that effect. But just to say, let's get rid of it, and then we have a certain amount of time, where it's kind of ironic that this is coming up now when, you know, we have this other project that's obviously, you know, trying to come to fruition here. So I think to all of us, it is ironic that we're just going to get rid of this. A lot of this stuff is House bills, and we understand that it's coming from Concord, and as a town that you guys need to make decisions on and act on it. But this isn't something that is coming from Concord, and it is ironic that it's coming up now. So I don't know, is this in benefit of us as the citizens, or is this in benefit because maybe developers have complained, or they don't like the process, or they say, you know, Goffstown's a pain to deal with because we have to go through this,
All the above.
right?
All the above. They all
So-
say we're too tough to deal with. They all say we're a pain, but they want to make money, and they want to spend as little as they have to make the same amount of money on 30 houses.
Sure, business.
Clearly, I just want to say, this language, to me, eliminating this is not to, and not that I want to make life difficult for developers, but this doesn't make life, I don't think any of us have any problem that we sit here and we hold people accountable to rules, and I don't care if someone says the Town of Goffstown Planning Board is really difficult to deal with, but we're expecting them to meet regulations and to come up with a development that meets what we require and meets a Goffstown standard. So I don't think anybody here at this table, I personally am not afraid of a developer saying, well, that person's difficult to deal with. We want to make sure the developments are done properly, that we're protecting water resources. I'm hearing concerns about wells. We want to make sure that you know, that if we're approving 40 lots, that there is sufficient water and to be able to, you know, serve and satisfy those wells and that sort of thing. So I don't want to cut you off. I just had to say that we're not, I think, here trying to make life easy for anybody. We're really up here as a board collectively, I think, trying to make sure that the way that we know Goffstown is going to grow and change and develop, we want to make sure that it's done in a way that is appropriate, that protects our resources and protects our neighborhoods for those of us who live here. So,
The other
sorry.
thing no one's really mentioned about, everybody talks about wells, nobody's talked about septic systems. And septic systems recharge the groundwater with the cleansed water from the septic system. So if you take 30 septic systems and 30 wells, and you put them inside this box right here in this table for a cluster subdivision, and the rest of the room is the open space, is your water quality going to be better with this type of a situation, or is it going to water quality be better when you have a conventional subdivision? That's a decision you have to make in your mind. I'm not telling you what to think. I'm just pointing out that when you condense all that, you run risks and you run problems.
So that's something that this planning board, and with this ordinance, if you need to make a change to, then that would be a suggestion. If instead of eliminating the open space plan, then you can amend the plan to get rid of the possibility of cluster, you know, housing, and then still maintain X amount of acreage of open space.
Right.
You know, because if this does get approved, and say if we get these post-stamp lots, cluster lots, and then you remain 50% of acreage of open space, and say out of 160 residents that are abutting, 40 people lose their wells or have a water problem. So then if you want to look to who's responsible for it, if the town approves a plan, and that plan off of an ordinance that says this is allowable, it's not a coincidence at that point. Then there's responsibility somewhere. You know, is the developer going to step up and say, hey, no problem, we're going to get all you guys your wells back? Probably not. But the town approves something like that. So it's fine to understand that there's a problem with the open space development or with the ordinance, as you guys as a planning board, as professionals that represent the civilians feel, and make necessary changes. Because if it just gets eliminated and there's no policy there, then we open up a window where, you know, these developers, you know, quote unquote, are gonna strike while the iron's hot.
No, they can't strike if there's nothing, if they can't do it. If there's no, if it's
Well,
not
if-
allowed, they can't do
Generally
it.
speaking, it is cheaper for a developer to do a open space cluster development than a conventional subdivision.
I don't, well, the thing is, I don't know that, and this is why I'm
Yeah,
here to
no, that's
comment
yeah.
on that. And I know we can look at how other people do things as well, but sometimes, you know, what's even more beneficial is to look at what this planning board or what this town does well and what it doesn't do well, and maybe focus on what we don't do well, rather than just compare ourselves, well, these guys do this, those guys do that. There's a reason why this got put in here years ago. Efforts of somebody all like you guys, and maybe some of you were around then. And the thing is, none of us are gonna be here forever, this planning board isn't gonna be here forever, and one thing that's not gonna change is real estate, and especially undeveloped real estate, is still always gonna be in demand. It's not gonna change. So everyone here has a decision to do something what's best for the town, not just now, but for years to come, to keep it desirable, to keep it the way it is. What your actions do now can dictate, well, whatever happens here, it happens here, and that's it. The changes are done, and they're done forever. We can't go back if we just develop something or make a change, you know, for whatever reason, if it's gonna make it easier for somebody else, you can't go back from that.
So are you for or against eliminating the open space ordinance?
Like I'm saying, I don't know if I am or not.
Okay.
You know, because if
Well,
I'm a
let's-
developer and I'm coming in here and I said, you know what, this open space is really gonna make it difficult for
Okay,
me.
that's a fair.
It's gonna give people more of a chance to fight against this,
Yep.
then obviously I'm for it. And if you put the cluster division and more people end up losing their wells, and I don't know what kind of impact that's gonna have.
Yep.
You know, or who's gonna come back here and say, you know, we all lost, 40 people lost their wells. It's not a coincidence, it just happened all at once. It's
Yep.
something that the town allowed.
I get it. And that-
You
and
know,
that's a fair-
what ramifications come from that afterwards?
And that's a fair answer, and I
So-
appreciate that you just don't understand at this point.
No, I'm
And
not,
that's-
I'm not a
Yeah.
developer if I
Yeah.
come in and look at this, but I know that someone put effort to have this here before.
Oh, that's for sure.
And there's a reason for that.
Yeah. Lot
And
of-
I don't think some part of history that can just completely be ignored and just say, let's just wipe it out. To
Yeah.
me, it's not responsible. What would be responsible is look at what is not right with this policy and then make the needed changes without just eliminating something.
But I can tell you from firsthand experience, a lot of effort went into that ordinance. A lot of time and a lot of effort. So just to let you know that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Like most people,
Once again, your name, please? sir?
Stephen Babin, 66 Peppermint Street. Once again, I'm confused what is best, and like the gentleman before me, let's look to the future. But I think I'm kind of breaking it down in my head that the ordinance is to keep the area looking nice. And if you go to a cluster, now you're gonna put more homes in a smaller footprint. And the problem with that is, my neighbor, my well produces decent water. My neighbor across the street doesn't. He hydrofrac'd his well, and my neighbor next door to him now has 2 wells. So when a developer comes in and talks about putting 40 homes in, there has to be an impact study. How are the wells existing right now? So you do a flow test. It costs money, but
We only are obligated and required to go by the state standard. And the state standard says that the well has to have a 75-foot radius from the septic system, and it also has to be within the bounds of the property, of the subject property. After that, we have no
I get that.
authority to decide whether that area can produce enough wells for water for 40 houses or not.
I get that, but you're gonna have, I've seen properties abandoned because wells have gone dry. And in fact, look at Merrimack with the,
PFOAs.
yeah. So that's affecting people miles away. So this is actually something that the state has to look into. But I think at this point, it is, do we want to have open spaces or do we want to have, you know, more
Convention.
clustered?
Oh.
But I think that the real point for me is what's the impact on wells? Because what you were talking about is more for not drilled wells. You know, because my well, most builders will drill 300. It's a package well deal. So Kentucky, that's what they drill. And if you get 4.5 gallons a minute, that's where they stop. When I drilled my well at 300 feet, I was getting 2 gallons a minute. We drilled down farther and I got lots of water. It's all money. And if my neighbor starts messing around, hydrofracking his well, my 4.5 turns into nothing. And if you have more houses closer together, the logic would say that will happen.
So it sounds like you are in favor of removing the cluster zoning ordinance.
It's a catch-22 because I don't want to see houses on top of one another.
Well, that's what
I mean,
cluster zoning is.
I look at that 55 plus development that's sitting on top of the road, and then you have the electrical monstrosity that sits next to it. And how did that get
That's
passed?
technically multifamily, that's different than cluster housing.
But it's on top of the road.
That got passed because they got the zoning variance and because they met all the ordinances and they had the thing met all the setbacks, the
But
rules,
who
the
gave them
regulations.
variance for that?
Well, then you'd have to change the ordinances in town.
I know,
That's what
but
we're trying to
it's
do.
horrible. And that's, I don't know what to say with this.
That's the
Part of me
ZBA.
is-
Go talk to the
And you need to go to Concord with the Housing Appeals Board, who would definitely, if you said no to something like that, they would say that we erred because there's a need for housing in the state of New Hampshire, and therefore they would overturn our decision anyway. So you talk about catch-22s.
Yeah.
We're in the same boat. Thanks. Evelyn Miller, come on up. Hi, Evelyn.
Hi there. I would love to keep the cluster, but it sounds like it needs adjustments.
Thank you.
I also think there's a quality of life, and yes, there's water, but there's also a love of nature. I've heard about Bedford, and they have, 2 or 5 acre lots, but you can't walk around across everybody's lot. So there's something wonderful. I think people came here to live in Goffstown because we have this love of nature. And we want to live here, but we don't want it to be a huge suburb or a part of the Eastern Shore megalopolis. So I think we really need to go back and look at what we've got. And I know it's work, and maybe we would have to come up with a different cluster or open space development. But I don't think we should get rid of that. That's the character of our beautiful town, and we're protecting the water, we're protecting it for wildlife, but we're protecting our quality of life too. And it's interesting to hear people, and I understand because I have a little cluster behind me, not here, but at home.
I thought you meant that.
The neighborhood, the sense of neighborhood, of neighborliness is incredible. Whereas I have many friends over in Bedford that live on these larger lots, and it's just a road down there, and you don't have the sense of community. At Halloween, our little neighborhood in the back, they have the children play together, they get a wagon full of bales of hay, and they come around on Halloween and stop at each house, and the kids run up. It's a sense of community. And yet at the same time, we have open space that they can also run around in and have trails. And I have to say, being on the trails, I am always running into, since COVID, bikers, hikers, people pushing strollers through the mountains, by the way. I think to get rid of open space would be really a devastate the character of our town.
Thank you, Evelyn.
Thanks, Evelyn. But it should be looked at, and maybe we can come up, and I had said, a collaborative effort between conservation and the planning board to re-look at this and maybe come up with a better open space plan so that it deals with some of the problems that you're seeing.
Thanks, Evelyn. Anyone else like to speak tonight?
Hello, Amy Pollock, 36 Peach Hill Road. I am against removing and deleting this Article 13.
I don't think we can compare Goffstown to Londonderry and these other communities. A lot of people visit Goffstown because of the natural resources, Glen Lake, the Uncanunics, as well as a lot of other properties that our people have access to. I use one right up the street that has a development with an open space area, and I walk in that a lot. And I've heard from other neighbors that I've come across that use that as well. So earlier, I think it was Mr. Russo who was stating, the advantage of the clusters at times, and it seems a lot of people are confused, but I don't think we should just throw this away. Maybe it needs to be reviewed and amended, but there is a real purpose to those open space areas. And when we have all of these keys tracked all the way out, there's no area left for the natural movement of animals. That is something that is unique to this area. We will lose that. We will lose the wildlife. And I don't know if I agree with you, Tim, on what you said about the water quality and how that recharges better in an area that's spread out. Because when you have every lot developed within a 80-acre parcel, you have each individual home is now able to do whatever they want on that entire section of land. So 80 acres is now not open anymore to anyone, and it's all private, and people can do pesticides, put in whatever they want for impervious, pavement, driveways, patios, pools, sheds, what have you. So there is less control in what's kept open, so less recharge, in my opinion, and the natural percolation and filtration that occurs through just the perviousness of soil. So water quality is really important. I'm glad a lot of people brought that up. I wasn't aware of the challenges in wells in other areas. I fortunately don't have that problem, but I have seen like sodium increase in my own personal well through salt usage. That's going to just continue if every single person has a very long driveway to get to the best part of the land. People are going to use salt. So I see more impact to the environment, to water quality, to the wildlife, to nature, if we remove this completely and get rid of it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anthony.
Oh.
Hi.
Katie McIntyre, 77 Sage Court. I think the question to all of the residents that are in here so you want to eliminate open space isn't really a fair question, and it kind of speaks to the whole process where everyone says, I don't know, I'm not sure, we don't understand it, because there should be a happy medium. We're saying you have to eliminate it or you don't have to eliminate it. And it doesn't have to be either one. If we go and amend and find the problem items that are within the current ordinance and adjust those to more accurately depict. The woman that was just up here, I appreciate what she said about the aspect of there are some benefits to the clustering, but then you think about the open space as well. If you have people, if you spread it out as if you were to mirror that yield plan and space people out and not cluster them and drain the resources in a single area, you then allow the folks that own that plot of land to do as they choose with it, and you eliminate those natural environments that we all enjoy and that provide those resources out and leach them out. So you eliminate that all, whether it's in a cluster or you spread it out and then everyone individually eliminates it, it still gets eliminated. So, and there's no regulation on how to do that. So I think rather than wipe something out with any plan to replace it or any thought or attempt to get there, that you hold that and look at amending it and where the actual pain points are to enforce the ordinance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Andrew Carteret, West Union Street, Goffstown. Thank you. I am in favor of keeping this ordinance until you have something that corrects it. That would be my opinion. And I'm just reading, kind of paraphrasing the purpose of the ordinance. It's to encourage alternative subdivision designs to preserve rural character and nature resources while providing desirable housing. The objectives of an open space ordinance: maintain rural character and open space, preserve agricultural land, promote flexible land use that integrates with the environment, reduce sprawl, encourage recreation and undeveloped land use, ensure buffers and setbacks to minimize property impact, and to encourage sustainable stormwater management. That's from the ordinance. Those are good things. Those are really good things. And to eliminate that without a plan, to me, doesn't sound like we've done our due diligence. And so just, why have an open space? It ensures Goffstown retains the rural character, the natural beauty that we all love, requiring developments to preserve open space. It protects agricultural land, encourages smart, sustainable growth. It minimizes sprawl, safeguards water resources, and maintains that valuable green space for recreation and conservation. So I believe removing this ordinance really would be a loss to the community, loss of open space, and really not help to preserve our unique identity. And so I strongly encourage you not to put forward, the ordinance to remove the section 13.5 open space, but I would, work hard to come up with a plan to improve it.
Thank you, Andy. We getting near the end, or does anybody else want to speak? David.
About this, no development.
Good evening. My name is David Neiman. I live at 215 Page Hill Road in Goffstown. And I have a few things to say. The master plan was mentioned earlier, and some excerpts were cited from that. I would like to add to that if you read page 23, it says that in 2020 the decision was made to continue to promote the open space subdivisions. That's part of the plan. That's part of the plan you all had created that you've all approved, so it'd be a little disappointing if you're turning your back on your own master plan. It also says in that plan that you would coordinate with the Conservation Commission in the development review decision when open space is created as part of the open space subdivision process. I have to say from experience it doesn't always go as smoothly as I would like it to see. I haven't always had the kindest reception when suggesting an alternative in the open space section of the plans. But be that as it may, forget about that. Going forward, I would pretty sure, I'm not speaking for the CC because the CC hasn't met yet, we haven't discussed this, but I would be really shocked if we weren't all willing to work with you to address the issues, to look at the issues, to find solutions, because that's when things work best, when we all pull together and work together. We all know that. There's a few things that have been brought up about the negatives of the open space subdivision regs. One of them that was mentioned is the stewardship. And yes, I have been before the planning board in the past talking about issues with the stewardship, how many of these were set up. The big problem is it's been so inconsistent that you can go through one plan after another, and in this plan they just made a homeowners association and do whatever. In this plan, oh well, we created a conservation easement, but we didn't say who's in charge of it, who's responsible for enforcing it. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they say, well, it'll be the select board, or it'll be whoever the select board appoints, such as the Conservation Commission. I even found one that said it would be the planning board, so you do have one on your plate. Be that as it may, the problem is not the ordinance, it's the inconsistent application of the ordinance. And that's an area that could be addressed in looking at ways to improve the process. And let's make it clear how we're going to do this. And alternatively, stewardship, one of the issues we had in the past when it proposed and finally went through was we had a project where the open space land went to the PLC. That was enormously successful. That was the Blackbriar subdivision, which has subsequently grown into the Black Brook conservation area. That's a huge success. That's the kind of thing that you can achieve with the plan when you think through it carefully and not, just overlook the open space part and, well, the developer drew it here in the plans and that's the end of discussion. No, we could be a lot more thoughtful and a lot more careful and make those work better. Another statement that I heard made earlier is that, well, the nature of the property coming forward for subdivision has changed. There has to be a lot of big open lots and all that, and that's all changed. No, it hasn't. There are still lots of big open lots out there, lots of farmland. I look at these maps all the time, looking for potential conservation projects, obviously, but there's a lot of projects out there that this ordinance would be incredibly valuable to keep it in place. And some of these open space areas that have been created are indeed very valuable. I already mentioned the Blackbriar Woods. The Briar Court open space preserved a huge wildlife corridor along Harry Brook. It's a very important part of that whole system and how it works in the middle of town. It would be a shame if we had thrown that away, but thankfully, through the wisdom of the planning board at that time, that was protected and preserved using this ordinance. Cedar Meadows open space is one where it's very fragmented, a lot more fragmented than I would like to have seen. That occurred before I was even on Conservation Commission. But despite it being fragmented, it protects some really critical habitat for a number of state endangered and threatened species. And those wetlands and those systems, there's interchange in the organisms between there. We're tracking it, we're watching it, we hear from the people who live in the neighborhood, and it connects very closely with other systems on abutting properties, including large properties around both Page Hill Swamp and Page Hill Marsh. You look at a place like Mountain Laurel Estates and the Van Buren Estates, which are two large open space developments that were done on the southern boundary of the town, close to Bedford. If you look at them, those were done well. You have large unfragmented spaces, and those areas are now connecting up with conservation land in Bedford. A lot of work that the PLC has done has moved up and encountered those, making them even more valuable. This plan can work extremely well, but the key is to be consistent. Not just treat it as a side issue when a development plan is going through, but treat it thoughtfully. There has been a lot of discussion about issue with wells and septic systems. We need to clarify a few things here. I mean, the statement was made, well, you want your septic system and your well close together. Well, they usually are in most houses, whatever the size of your lot is. My well is in one side of my house, the septic system's on the other. I don't worry too much about that because it's designed properly. My well's 500 feet deep. My septic system is what, 2 feet deep, 3 feet deep? There's no interchange between those, and they're designed properly. And they're being designed properly when these subdivisions are being built. I have a little bit of confidence in DES and the guidelines and the regulations. Talking about how, well, if you have these clustered together with too many wells, it's going to cause water problems for adjacent subdivisions. Okay, give me one bona fide example. I mean, we have examples in town of people with well problems. In fact, there's problems all over the state, especially in the drought years. That's a given. That's a fact. But the fact that needs to be illustrated, which I have not heard illustrated, is that in open space cluster subdivision has created problems like that in Goffstown with some other subdivision.
That was not said tonight, David. I'd like to make sure that's clear. You made that up on your own just now.
I believe he's referring to, I said this board has seen instances where there have been issues in regards to what's going on property and not having anybody to...
No one, you pointed right at me, David, so it's...
I'm pointing around the room,
You
but let me...
pointed right at me, but the point is,
Probably better
no
if
one
you
has
don't
said tonight that a cluster subdivision has adversely affected any other subdivision because of the well.
May I clarify?
Please.
You did not say that
Thank you.
explicitly. It was implied. It
I
was
talked about
very
septic
much
systems
implied.
within the cluster subdivision,
There's
David.
a difference
not-
between implying something and stating it directly, and it was implied over and over in previous comments. You know, the comments that were supposed to be no two-way communication, but you listening, and then everybody comes up here and the board does more talking than the commentators. Just have to point that out.
Should we time you, David?
So, David, I think then we should amend our rules and from now on that we will not try to be appropriate and address people's comments tonight in the room rather than just walk out of here with the Those people didn't say a word to us, they didn't give us any answers. I think we went beyond our normal scope to try to be helpful and be open and honest with the folks in the room
Well, I
tonight.
think
Everybody's points are well taken, and they're all being considered.
Thank you, Dave. Please continue.
Thank you. A lot of things have been implied, but I think I've made the point that
Thank
this
you.
is a valuable this is a valuable ordinance. It's done a lot of good, and the objections that have been raised to it are not with merit. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, David.
Anybody else tonight?
Sure, I'll go.
Come on up. What'd you bring us?
Don't worry, I'll be quick. Who wants some turkey club? All right, my name is Jennifer Pelletier. I live at 18 Acorn Drive, and I promise to be quick, but I support keeping any and all open air space, at which time that you can revise it. It sounds like that's the general consensus, and I agree with it. To make more, I am all in favor of, because as several people have stated, I live in these woods constantly, and the number of people since COVID that I've seen in them is astronomical. I mean, it's 10 times what I ever saw in the first 20 years living here. Also, just beyond, I work out of the, I almost said state, I don't work out of state, out of, town. And the number of people that say, oh, I'm looking for a house in Goffstown. You guys have the best, oh my gosh, it's country, but you're so close to city. I mean, people love that about Goffstown. I would just hate to ruin that to, I don't know, make a buck or be like another town or city or whatnot. So I'm all for it. Yes, please. And then you can have my turkey club.
Hello. All right. My name is Andrew Chaplin. I'm from 9 Foe Street in Pinardville. So I'm not near any open space, but I recognize its value to the community. I think open space, as we have it, I mean, it's kind of unique to require open space for private developments. Not every town in New Hampshire does it. We do, and we put that thought in back in the day for a reason. For that, I would like us to keep the open space requirements, amend it as we move forward. We can change like what specific things are actually griping people about the open space process, because I haven't heard like specific things that are bad about it, just like in general, like it's not great, so we want to get rid of it. I think we should hold off on getting rid of it, look at the nitty-gritty stuff. If the whole thing is absolutely trash to everyone who's looking at it, then we can rewrite it. But we should not delete it before looking at it and coming up with an alternative, because that's just not great planning on my part, or in my mind anyways. I heard a couple things said earlier in regards to some of these people talking about their wells. I'm a science guy, I like to look at numbers, look at reports. I would like to say that data suggests that aquifer drainage is less when you have smaller lot sizes. So if you have smaller lots on these cluster properties, you're going to take less water resource per capita than you will if you have everyone spread out. So in regards to losing water in your aquifers, these cluster developments are probably going to do less damage than large developments with no open space. That said, I am for the open space, and that's all I got to say about it. So,
Thank you.
guys.
Thanks, Andrew.
Anyone else?
Hi, my name's Keegan Chassie, 77 Sage Court. I just want to clarify, whether this is changed or not changed, it doesn't affect anything that is already in process, right? So developments that are already put through, it will not change that. So in order for those to change, they would have to withdraw completely and then
Reapply.
reapply.
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that. And I think some of the tough part of the decision is, like, we like the open space because of the trails and everything else, but we still don't feel that like you're saying, like a keyboard style, neighborhood fits the surrounding neighborhoods in a lot of areas. So we do like the trails and everything else, and if you spread it out, it is more like our neighborhood. But then there's no trails or anything else. Technically, everything's privately owned, and it kind of goes away. And like other people were stating, people technically could clear their entire lot and, and add, irrigation and use potentially way more water. So I think there's kind of almost pluses and negatives to both sides, which is the tough part. I think it would almost make it more expensive to get rid of the open space for developers. Roadways are 10 times more expensive now than they used to be, and they would have to build 10 times more roads for those same 47 houses. But again, there's more negatives, so I think that's where a lot of the confusion is. But I think the biggest part is that it doesn't affect anything that's already put in.
Correct.
So it wouldn't change any of the development that's already in the works.
We'd get sued if we did that.
Right, no, I understand, yeah. So, thank you.
Thank you, Keegan. Anybody else?
Are we all starting to go around again?
Did she bring enough dinner for us? There's another public hearing.
Excuse me? Anybody else tonight? All right, seeing that, we will close the public hearing for tonight. There will be a second meeting, public hearing. When is the next meeting going to be, Joanne?
I don't have the date with me.
It's in December sometime?
Does December 12th
Or January,
sound right?
rather?
No, it's in
January.
January.
Next month.
January 23rd.
Could you pass that to Barbara?
Is that what it is? No, that's our regular meeting.
Could you give that to Barbara?
It's before
It's
that.
early January.
I didn't put it on. I wouldn't do it.
Why not? They don't have to come back. It's a done deal. Folks, hang out a second.
I believe it's January 9th, but don't quote me on it.
Because what y'all want to come and vote
And I have it.
Nobody's going to come to that.
And I also want to talk to Colleen afterwards to see if we can do, if there's an amendment that would be, that we could muster under notice for the second public hearing that might deal on a gross basis.
Maybe be doing I think we're doing ourselves a service to act on it tonight and agree to what subcommittee.
I mean, there's
nothing like I'm making notes on we need to rewrite it.
the whole thing just needs to be scrapped.
So it's not gonna happen.
Well, I kept looking to see if there was something that could be done.
I mean, there's stuff in the regulations, like the minimum lot size, 10,000 square feet.
Speak up, if you want everybody to sit, sorry.
Yeah. I'm trying to get everybody to stop talking. I was going to ask the board if they would like to consider acting on Article 13 this evening. Pick a straw poll. David?
I would prefer having the second session.
Absolutely. Yeah, we got a second hearing scheduled, we should hold it.
You can change the language from tonight.
Sure.
But once you go to the second hearing, you can't
That's
make
right.
any
Yeah.
changes.
Well, I'm talking about whether we would want to pursue Article 13 at all. Do we want to act on it tonight and consider removing it from the ballot and agree to the rework, or do we want to have another meeting where all these folks have to come out and we have to do this all over again? And this is why I'm wanting if the board would like to take a preemptive move and do something about it this evening, or if the board wants to let it run another meeting and discuss it all over again when it's a foregone conclusion, in my opinion. After listening to all these folks tonight.
Tim, I want to hold the second public hearing.
Okay, then we
Or
will.
there's the second public hearing, if they couldn't make it tonight, they've got that opportunity to come and speak.
Okay, so thank you folks for coming.
Well, hold on. How does everyone else feel on the board
Yeah,
about
do we
that?
want to go?
Can we hear from everyone on the board on that?
It's not your decision to ask for that, sir. It's my decision, and I will agree to your decision. I started to do a straw poll, and I will go around the room. David, would you like to have another meeting?
Dave already said he wanted another meeting.
Dave wants another. Barbara?
I think we should, it's been noticed for 2 public hearings. I think we should do a second public hearing.
Ryan?
I concur. Second meeting.
Colleen?
Yeah, it's been noticed we'll have a second one, but I agree that I think that ultimately, I'm leaning in the direction of that we are gonna remove this, we're gonna have a subcommittee, I would hope, to rework this and come back with something for next year. But that would be my only reason for not having a second meeting, is because
You
I
want to
think I've
remove the
heard.
article or
Remove the
continue?
article.
Okay.
Remove the article from consideration. That would be my only reason for not having a second public hearing, is if we were thinking we've heard enough that we know we need to think a little more. But if we are expecting a number of people to come in and support at the next public hearing and want to eliminate this article, or want to eliminate the ordinance.
But we don't know what we're gonna hear now, this is
Yeah.
our second public hearing.
That's a very good point. Need to have it.
Absolutely new
Yeah, we don't
issues
know.
that we didn't hear tonight.
Yep, okay.
Well, I'm in favor of not pursuing it any further and agreeing to a subcommittee to review and replace it with another. So I would be opposed to a second public hearing.
It's been publicly noticed as 2 public hearings. So you have people that sometimes will say, I have some things I have to do, it's gonna be another one, I missed tonight's and I'll go to the next one. And it's been publicly noticed, so we should have the second
And
public.
Carl's already stated his opinion.
Yeah.
All right, folks, we're gonna have another public hearing.
We heard you.
We heard you, believe us. Your arguments were all well presented.
Thank you.
And Joanne, did you say the date?
I believe it's January 9th.
I think you're right.
I'm pretty sure it's
I mean,
January.
we heard, I mean, I get it. I mean, there's not much question about what, I mean, the people who vote for it is more for confusion, and they're thinking about a specific proposal.
Thank you.
but-
Good night.
Thank you, good night.
Good night.
But I just would like to look at it to see if there's anything we can do in the interim in regards,
more to discuss.
in regards to whether.
Have a good night.
You've got more business to conduct.
Can I ask, though, if we were trying to look at, because I know that we can make changes before the next public hearing, but the next one, we can't make any changes, whatever is there is going on the warrant.
It
But
can still be removed at that.
it could still be removed now.
Right,
We
oh,
can.
yeah.
Yes.
But I don't know, I'm wondering if Barbara and I should sit down and try to review and see, is there anything, but that would be very substantively different if we were to start trying to
No,
look
we can't-
at.
we can't
No,
rewrite it.
I'm thinking about
There's
things,
not enough time.
whether
Yeah.
it's a density issue, the minimum acreage to qualify for it, whether there's a way to put between if the parent lot is between 30 and 60, the yield plan will be presented and the planning board will decide whether or not the
And
cluster
the
should
density, and
apply.
the density, and discuss the density
I don't
bonus
think
as
we,
well.
even those types of things, there's not, I think those are all for consideration for
Well,
next year rather than.
Well, I mean, we need to hear,
I
and
think we should establish a subcommittee to deal specifically with
Yeah,
this issue so that we can focus on it and hit it hard.
yeah.
so,
Okay.
and frankly, I'd like to have a notice go out for volunteers for the subcommittee, because you
Yes.
heard a lot of people say
Sure.
we should all get together and work on it, and it needs to be a balanced group, and, I want some commitment to it, because one of the reasons, if you don't force the hand, this stuff doesn't get done. I mean, look at our development regs, for God's sakes, right? I mean.
I hear you, Barbara, I understand that.
So,
quandary.
I mean, if I vote to take this off, it's going to be because people have promised blood to me that there will be an article on next year to replace it, because, and anyways.
Which we
I
should
mean,
start now.
Yes.
Yeah,
because
that's
of
what
how-
I mean, is
because
that
of
it
how-
needs to
how
start
long-
now.
So maybe the volunteers will show up at the meeting, we can sign them up at the meeting. when-
Yeah.
There you go.
Public
Good
hearing.
idea.
I got a list of
There's a
names.
sign-up sheet right in the front there, if anybody wants to sign up to be on the review.
Well, and we
committee.
need to discuss that, because we need to have people who understand the planning history and the planning needs, not just people who have trails that they walk on, quite frankly.
So,
All
if
right.
there's nothing else for tonight, Phil,
Oh, there
I
is
have
one
one
thing.
couple of things.
what? You said there was no other items on the agenda, you told me.
No, I do have a few things here that need the board's input. So if you remember when map 4, lot 63 on New Boston Road, the fellow who wants, I can't think of his name.
Mulaney.
Jody Mulaney.
Yeah.
He wants to do the 2-lot
Yeah,
subdivision.
yeah.
Well, now they're doing their thing, and they found out that the why don't you explain it? The front
So-
bounds have to
so
be
I-
granite.
Yeah, well, what happened was the original plan that we got said like front bound to be set. It didn't specify what it was. We got the final plan for approval, which we always look over when we get before it's going to be signed, and it said iron pin set. So it's supposed to be a granite bound at the front lot. So I decided, I was like, I'll go out and look at it. I went out and looked at it, and it was a drill hole. And so their plan was wrong. Their plan said iron pin set, and it had a date. I think it was like October 28th or something. So I went out there, and it's a drill hole, and our regulations say it's supposed to be a granite bound. So I replied back.
Drill hole in the stone wall.
In a stone wall.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Which isn't, our regulations don't allow as a front bound. So I said to the engineers, like, this needs to be a granite bound, and they want it to, they're asking if it can be a drill hole, and I said, it's in our
No.
regulations, I can't make that decision. He's like, well, can you guys ask the board? So,
So that's what we're asking.
So consensus board, are we gonna accept the drill hole, or do we require granite bounds? David?
And before you vote on that, just understand that there's a existing stone wall there.
Well, they can set a granite bound in a stone wall, they know how to do it. They disassemble the stone wall, they put the granite bound in, and they reassemble the wall around it.
Okay.
It can be done. David, you want to?
Is this stone wall a long-standing?
it's not a quality wall,
Is-
if that's
is
what you're
the-
wondering. It's not one of
is-
these pristine things.
Is
It's
the
like,
hole-
They'll be able
Is
to
the hole
bolt-
in a massive boulder that's half buried?
I
or
couldn't
is it
see the
in
hole
top?
because I went out there and it was a wooden stake that said drill hole on it, and I dug around in the leaves. I didn't see a specific drill hole, so I don't even know if a drill hole exists.
You don't even know if you're in the right place.
But there was also a stake
I'm
moved, so I
familiar
don't even
with-
know if I was looking in the
I'm
right
familiar
spot.
with older properties in town that do have drill holes on them.
Correct.
They-
But once we
Picture of it, I
subdivide.
forgot
So-
about that. I have a picture of it.
Oh, that's all right, John.
We have a
But-
plan that made a representation
You
that
don't
wasn't
see it?
correct, and there's a drill hole,
Yes.
maybe.
But
Granted.
the thing is, when I went out to look, there was like a tree that had been cut down, and the stake that said drill hole was loose, so I don't even think the stake was in the right spot. So I think when the guy cut the tree down, he knocked the stake down, he stuck it back in the ground, and it
Which
wasn't.
is
So
an
that's why I
example
couldn't
of
even
why a
found it.
granite
But
bound
if
is
the plan
something
says
we
a granite
require.
bound to be set, we should
Yes.
require a granite
It
bound
didn't
to
say
be
though,
set.
that, the
No,
plan did not
the
say
plan
it, it was
Well,
omitted.
that's
So
it did.
the plan we got the night that you guys approved it, it said bound to be set. It didn't specify type.
The
When
regs
The regs
require.
The regs require granite bound. When I got the final plan, it said iron pin set, but that's not actually what was set, so it was.
It goes without saying, if the requirement is for a bound to be set, and the regs say the bound has to be granite, then there's no discussion.
Yeah, that's what I told him. I was like, I don't have the
Yeah.
authority
Agreed.
to change
Barbara?
this in the
Granite.
field.
Brian?
Granite.
Granite,
Granite.
Phil,
See this
Hollis,
picture?
he has to put granite bounds
It-
in. No, I don't
it
wanna
went-
see
It
it.
went black. Oh no, it's just the way you're holding it. You got one of those privacy screens on there.
Thing about granite bounds and drill holes, you can roll the rock over wherever you want it.
Yeah, that's
very
why I don't
easily.
like drill holes.
Put the rock wherever you want it.
Yep, drill
Okay,
holes are.
what's
like
your other
old-timey.
item, Joanne?
Okay, and
Get
the
back
other
to
item
business.
is, the ZBA in Bedford held a meeting.
Oh, yeah, I
from
saw
the-
this.
Minutes were,
From
Those minutes were
the
brutal.
wetlands
No, I
that are
read
on the
them this
property
afternoon.
of where they want to
Brutal.
put the field and everything. So the abutter, the woman who lived in Goffstown, who came with her attorney, she had filed an appeal, something about the wetlands. I think she said they didn't have the proper setback or something. And she went to court, and the court remanded it back to the ZBA in Bedford, and Bedford...
For the wetlands issue.
Just for the wetlands, and Bedford heard it, just about whether they were going to address regional impact and notify Goffstown, Manchester, there was one other town. They did agree to do that.
I think it's just
So-
Goffstown and Manchester.
Just
I
Goffstown.
thought there were
yeah,
three.
the planning commission.
Oh, the planning
Oh, the
commission.
planning
Yeah,
commission.
that's right.
For regional
So
impact.
now they've
Yeah.
scheduled the next ZBA meeting to the 21st of January. So I didn't know if you wanted to go or if Barbara was going, but I gave you all that I have right now.
We had discussed going to the planning meeting to discuss regional impact with the
Well, it
planning
hasn't
meeting.
gotten there yet because
Right, so
of
that's
this
why I
appeal.
don't wanna go to
Yeah.
the zoning board.
This
of
is
appeals.
regional impacts based on 120 square feet of wetland impact. That's 140 feet from the Goffstown.
Is this
town
part of
line.
the problem
Proceed.
corner? I
It
didn't-
is the problem corner. So the one thing that I do think is a regional impact is their stormwater system failed at some
Right.
point.
Right.
It had a breach, and it basically, it created a wetland behind
Right.
this Goffstown resident's backyard. So I think there is regional impact technically, even though it's 120 square feet.
So they
But-
adversely affected their land by
They
creating
previously
wetlands
did,
on
yeah,
the
so they're-
neighbor's
yeah,
land.
So now they're trying to resolve the issue. I mean, I think it's a good thing that they're doing. I just don't know what input we would have on it in terms of Goffstown.
So what is the by the time I got to the part of the minutes that was this issue, my mind was sort of, it was unbelievable. So what exactly is the question before the ZBA in Bedford? Does anybody?
So they need a variance to impact the wetland?
Yes.
Yeah, so they need
The
a
first,
variance.
the first issue was that the zoning board of adjustment in Bedford did not consider a regional impact at all.
Right, no, I
And
understand that.
that's been resolved,
piece.
right?
But so the
They
actual.
are addressing it now.
But they're addressing it now. So what is the actual question before?
Application is to permanently fill
Fill the wetland.
1,200 square feet and temporarily fill 578 square feet of wetlands. So it's a variance to fill wetlands.
Okay.
And so it's then going to have, so because it was remanded back, now because of the regional impact issue that they hadn't considered, now they've determined it's a development of regional impact, so they're moving ahead, they'll have a public hearing on this application then for the fill of, 12,000 square feet of wetland. So do we have comment or input on the variance criteria? I don't know that we as a planning board would be commenting on whether this meets the criteria for a variance. I don't know if our ZBA has any
We don't-
thoughts on it, but we
Do
don't
we
have.
require a variance for wetland impacts?
The inner and the outer.
Yeah.
I mean, should we ask, do we want to ask the Conservation Commission if they want to review this and if we should put together
I
a
asked Patty
comment
about that because
from-
I was saying to her.
She sent
share
it to
this
them.
With the conservation and I think they meet.
They met last night, right?
Oh, was it last night? Did you meet last night? It's next
Oh,
week.
that's right, it is next week. I keep thinking we're in the first meeting of the week, but it's a weird week.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
She told me, conservation doesn't typically comment on regional impact. It's the planning board who does that. But I
Yeah, but it's-
thought it would be nice to
Can
send
you
it
ask her
to
to
them
send it to them
and
to
But it's a
give us
con-
some input? Because
It's
the
a
Goffstown
conservation
resident
issue.
has really been affected by this.
It's a conservation issue, not a planning issue.
Well, but it's not under Bedford rules, so,
No, I
So
mean,
apparently it's a
from
zoning
our
issue for
Conservation
them.
Commission.
yeah, it's zoning for Bedford, so ask them for a comment because, the Goffstown resident has been adversely affected by this, and I don't know whether this helps or hurts the Goffstown end of it. I have no idea, I don't know enough about the
Joanne,
wetland
they
stuff.
sent you the minutes, did they send it, I didn't see, was the application attached to that?
No,
mean,
I
have they
gave
sent
you everything I have, but she
Yeah.
said if I needed anything else, just let her know.
You should ask them who does their minutes.
Yeah, they're
It's like
very
a-
thorough.
it's
It's
like-
like word for word.
Can you steal their minutes?
Maybe they have artificial intelligence.
Probably
for
is.
the
That's how we're doing ours
tape.
now.
Is it?
Call them, whoever that is.
How does
Call
it
them.
know who's speaking?
I used to take minutes
Ask
from
them.
Bedford. You have to wear.
Face recognition
well, back
software.
then, you had to wear a headset.
Yeah.
Face
so you can
recognition
really hear
software.
well,
Oh,
but they do
great.
want almost every
That's
comment
Elon
down.
Musk.
Yeah, Elon. We'll see what he has.
All right,
All
but,
right.
I mean, I just am not, if there's something that needs to be said, I'll go to the meeting. I mean, I'll figure out a way to go, or one of us will, but, I mean, wetlands is really conservation.
It's a Tuesday night in January, the 21st.
It'll be a blizzard if I'm going.
So what I got from the minutes though is they already have AOT approved and they have their wetland permits
Get my
approved.
stamp
Right.
put in.
And there's been a lot of back and forth with the state, so.
It
it's-
doesn't sound like it was straightforward.
Yeah. So.
And Tim, I will volunteer to serve on a subcommittee to look at.
I'll have you, you'll be the top name on the list at our next
Yeah.
public hearing.
No doubt in my mind.
And we'll have them, as they come up to speak, they can write their name down on
And
the
the
list.
first thing I want this subcommittee to do is to look at what lots of land are we talking about in Goffstown? Because I don't know that I
Do we have, can we
agree
do
that
like,
they're
with our
that.
GIS, can we
simple
do an
GIS.
analysis just
exercise.
a search
Right.
on how many undeveloped or underdeveloped
Who's
parcels.
gonna do that? You have to have someone sit and go through the whole GIS?
I have,
Yeah.
I have
Do we
a
have?
Oh,
a
David has it, I'm
Excel spreadsheet from Scott Bartlett.
No,
that
you looked
has
at me, I was like, I did not
vacant
give you that.
land.
Yeah.
It's all vacant land in
And lot
town.
size.
At least
But
it'd be
they're all,
it'd be
you know,
identified by
some
map and
tiny
lot, there you
lots.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vacant's tough though, because if it's
Yeah.
one house on 200 acres,
Yeah.
All
then
you
it's
gotta do
not
is read the
vacant.
sentence, see how many, what the acreage is.
Yeah,
and then
I
strike
mean, just
all
look
that.
at large acreage lots and
Exactly.
Maybe there's a parameter you could
But
set to go like
I
50
think
acres or more.
David's, whoever said that, I think it was David, David's point was, you have a lot of farmland out there that if, you know, enough money was given to the owner, they might sell. And
yeah, what if the Shirley's sell on top of the hill?
Yeah.
All right.
Most
So,
of that land on the top of the hill is in conservation already,
this
right?
is all,
Is it?
this is
Oh,
all
is Shirley's
speculation. I don't know if we should be
Welch's
speculating on
Farm
this
is in
right here.
conservation.
Well, that's good.
Shirley would never let that land go.
I wouldn't
to
think so.
develop.
There's a lot of farmland on Addison.
I don't think we should be speculating on this right now. I think we should.
Well, all I'm doing is talking about the lots that would be affected. Okay.
Anything else, Joanne?
So that's all I had, and then there's a plan here for you to sign.
Yeah, I know.
We'll put
Already
the-
got you down. I'm
favorite
waiting for a
thing.
second.
Second.
That was fast.
Okay, there's been a motion to adjourn. Phil, Colleen, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstention, motion passes. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, GTV.